Okay, so we start with the first one, and it's all about the trade deadline. Here we go. Just a week away from the trade deadline. The rumors are sure to heat up. We all know some teams have sat players they'll likely move, and we've already seen one blockbuster deal involving an all-star. But activity on the Blazers front appears to be pretty quiet. Do you think Portland will make any moves before the deadline? If so, who's on their way out? Who's coming to Rip City?
I want you to start this off. You never go first.
Awesome.
Yeah, you start this off, man.
I love setting them up, man. What can I say? So let's see. What did I write here?
Maybe this wasn't the best idea.
Usually keeps things close to the vest. So I'm not surprised that we're not hearing anything.
Okay,
this is how they roll. But stay woke, y'all.
Okay.
Because this is what they do. As we get closer to the trade deadline, names are going to come up. Even like with the DeAndre Jordan thing, when I heard that, I was like, wait, what? What? Why? You know, but as you start to look a little further into things, I can understand that. Especially, we mentioned Mark Stein's report on DeAndre Jordan. But something more realistic for the Blazers probably doesn't involve a blockbuster deal, but maybe a role player along the way. I don't know who, but I think this would be a good opportunity, as we said, to try and maybe will and deal. But then again, you've got to give up a draft pick along the way. Are the Blazers game to do something like that? They love draft picks, especially Neil O'Shea. Yeah. This is how they do things. If I'm realistic about things, I don't think that they're able to do anything. I just think that they're locked in to where they are, which is kind of a bummer to hear, because you're going to hear about other teams that are making these big deals, and the Blazers are going to kind of be stuck in this spot where they've been, where you're hoping that they can make a move, and those moves aren't happening to get them into a place where you're competing in the West.
To your point about things being quiet, we didn't hear a peep about the supposed Paul George trade offers that were being made at the time around the draft until after he had been dealt. Yeah. So in terms of keeping quiet, you're right. The Blazers have done a good job of keeping things kind of under the hood.
And even last year when we were at this point, it was pretty quiet. And then Mason Plumlee is gone.
Yeah, that's true.
That dropped out of
Nurkic
nowhere.
comes in. Yep. I mean, that kind of came out of nowhere for me as somebody who's covering the team. So I wouldn't be surprised if something happens, but if I'm realistic, I don't see something happening.
And I was hoping you were going to come in with the bombshell, because I knew that was probably the direction Jared and I were going to go with this. Is I don't see any major moves happening either with the Blazers. I think part of it is because they are playing so well right now. Yeah. That, you know, if you're Terry Stotts and you're Neil O'Shea, you know, you're saying this is what we've been thinking this team is going to be. And the last couple of years they've gone hot in the second half and continue to do this the rest of the season. And they're probably anticipating this Blazers team is going to continue to go on this hot stretch the rest of the year, because it's what they've become accustomed to. And in terms of big moves to make, we already saw with the Blake Griffin deal, you know, the Blazers don't have the assets the Pistons gave up to get a player.
Right, you saw how far off they are from having that.
Besides trading C.J. McCollum, they don't have anyone on that roster that can bring back that sort of value. And even with the Mirotic trade, I think we saw the Blazers aren't interested in giving up a first-round pick if it's not for a guy who's going to be here, a long-term asset. And Mirotic, while you would have had him for next year, after that, you're not sure. And so, given those two things, I think the conclusion is the Blazers probably won't do much. The one thing I think they will do, and Jared will probably get into this as well, is I think they will either move Ed Davis or Noah Vonleh. For them, probably preferably Noah Vonleh, because they are about $3 million over the luxury tax line right now, and Noah Vonleh makes about $3.5 million. Right? So if you can move him for a second-round pick, cash considerations, just pretty much anything, then that's totally worth it if you're the Blazers, especially if you don't plan on bringing Vonleh back, which I doubt they do, given that they just drafted Zach Collins and Caleb Swanigan. So if you can get rid of Vonleh and avoid the luxury tax this year and put off another year before you're even talked about in luxury tax repeater type penalty, then it's totally worth making that move. I think they would, if Paul Allen is set on getting under the luxury tax, I think they would move Ed Davis too, and I think he'd be pretty easy to move. But I think they're going to try to move Noah Vonleh, because Ed Davis, not only does he have the star player on his side, he's a big mentor to Zach Collins, who the Blazers are investing in long term. So they want to keep Ed around. It's just, you know, that balance of, do we want to keep him around and go over the luxury tax, which is why I think they'll probably try to focus on
It
Noah.
feels like Ed Davis's value is just so high. He's been consistent. He's been a role player. He's been a leader in that locker room. Everyone likes him. I mean, this is huge. When he had what game was it last week when he had a pretty solid game? Was it Minnesota
Mavericks.
or it was Mavericks?
Yeah, Mavericks.
It was the Mavericks game. And Jason Quick had said something pretty interesting and just how excited the team was for him to have this big game. And when you're excited when certain players do well, but this is like a glue guy, it seems, in the locker room that holds them together. So I think that this will hurt the morale a little bit if they do let someone like Ed Davis go. But the thing is, his value is so high right now. I've got to imagine that Olshey is taking calls, especially from winning teams that are just missing that one piece, that need a tough guy, a grit guy, someone who's down to set screens, get rebounds, and do the dirty work. It makes so much sense that Ed Davis isn't here in a week.
But his value is as high to the Blazers as it is to any other team, and maybe higher. And so I think that I'd be really surprised if Ed Davis is moved. If another team makes a call and is offering a good young player and a first-round pick for Davis, then something like that would happen. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to give him away just to get under the luxury tax line. He's too valuable. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to move Vonleh. There's, I think, 6 teams that are under the cap right now that could take Vonleh in without having to send back matching salary. And I don't think it would be too hard to convince them to take on a player like Vonleh, who's still, 22, 23, and has potential, and is this, he doesn't have a contract past this year, so you don't have to worry about with a player like him. I think that is actually has some value, is that you'd have his bird rights and you'd have the opportunity to sign him if you wanted after this season, and he's probably not going to command a lot in the offseason. And so I think that having him as an expiring contract is actually more valuable than if he was signed for a couple more years at a larger salary. And so I don't think it's going to be difficult. I don't think the Blazers could even maybe get a second-round pick or something back in exchange for him. So I think that's probably the most likely move. Realistically, I think that's all they do. But I think there will be more rumors. I think that there are other moves they could make. I keep going back to this report from John Canzano like a month ago, where he said that Paul Allen and Vulcan were putting their feelers out there to kind of see what the rest of the NBA thought about the roster. Is it coaching? Is it the roster composition? What's going on? You had the meeting with Damian Lillard and Paul Allen. What was said in that meeting? I just wonder if, even with the Blazers playing as well as they are right now, do you still look at them as anything more than a team that wins maybe 45 games and maxes out at the 6 seed or the 5 seed, and maybe second round of the playoffs is their ceiling? Do you look at them as anything more than that? Not just this year, but next year, the season after that. And if there are trades out there that they can make, even if it's at the expense of a first-round pick, I think that this might be a deadline where something could happen. Just because there's been just rumors out there that maybe the front office is not exactly pleased with what they've built. And I don't think they're going to tear it down, because that won't work for Damian Lillard. But I think they're going to be very active, and they're going to try to improve this roster. Trying and actually doing something are two entirely different things. But realistically, I think getting under the luxury tax is the one trade they'll make. But I wouldn't be surprised if they make other moves too. There's just rumors and whispers out there.
I think, to your point, they're at that spot.
Yeah.
Rip City's been at this spot for the past year. I think that ceiling that you're talking about, that 45 win threshold, is what you're going to get if they don't do something big.
Right.
And the problem is, what do you have to give up?
Yeah.
What can you get? That's what messes this all up. This is why you are where you're at.
I mean, Neil Olshey made his own bed with the
Right.
summer of 2016.
Right.
Like, The Ringer had an article today that, wrote, and he spent $243 million that offseason on Evan Turner, Alan Crabb, Maurice Harkless, Myers Leonard, Festus Ezeli. So one of those guys currently plays every night for the Blazers out of those 5 that he spent $240 million on 2 summers ago. So he made his own bet, Neil Olshey, with this. And that doesn't matter to Blazers fans. It's still equally as frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, if you're looking at Neil Olshey, and if they need to make organizational moves or whatever, it seems like that would be the place to look. Just because the reason that they're in such a tough spot to make a big time move is because the GM
all those
put them
salaries. Yeah. Do you think those salaries hamstring the Blazers' flexibility enough that they would attach draft assets to get off of those contracts this deadline? Do you think it's a big enough deal that, I mean...
It depends on what they got in return. I mean, that
all right,
sounds
well, here's
cliche,
an idea for you.
But
What if the Mavericks were willing to take on Evan Turner's salary and send back Wesley Matthews if you put a first-round pick in the deal?
then I think they would make that deal because Wes Matthews has one less year on his contract, and he actually fills the need the Blazers need because he's an outside three-point shooter. Yeah. So if it's something like that presented itself, yeah, I think the Blazers would. But I don't think they're going to trade Evan Turner and a first-round pick for a guy who will end up at the end of the bench with Myers Leonard and Maurice Harkless.
So to put a bow on this topic, this time next week, do we think that the Blazers are right where they were?
For the most part, I think they will.
Yeah, I do too.
Me too. So it's
and
they're going to try.
Yeah.
But can they really
it's also
do something?
What's out there?
Right.
That's the other question.
Yeah.
Because they need shooting and they need an upgrade at the wing. Mm-hmm. And are those pieces out there to be had right now? And we just don't know. We don't know who's available.